Hello, can you all hear me? Yeah, I'm testing my microphone. I don't know if it's great sound quality. It's all right. There are other chairs if we need chairs. Oh, yes. Okay. The microphone. With it, the light on. Perfect. Oh yeah, I'll do that. There are yoga mats.
Great.
There's, I think, one foam roller.
Thank you. I appreciate that. What's your name?
Tahni.
Amani, I'm Leslie. So nice to meet you.
Imani's one of our resident artists.
Oh,
wonderful. Here. Shannon. Can you see us? It's a weird angle. We're in the Dancing Ground studio, and so I have my computer here, and then there's
so we're like looking up, but yeah, that makes sense. Okay, good.
Maybe if I put you on a stool.
Hi.
Hey. Now are we too low?
You got it. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yay. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. So good to see everyone from places all over.
Yeah.
Shannon, where are you right now? You said you're in West Coast?
Yeah, it's a little surreal. I'm in the basement of my friend's house in Seattle, and he's the person I started this organization with 25 years ago. And so I'm like in a lot of time travel right now, especially in relationship to this conversation in weird ways. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Seattle. That's where I am at. That's why I'm wearing a hoodie,
Nice.
which is in August.
Yeah. Is the volume coming through the TV?
Now, let me see if I can get the sound to work better for us. I can hear you through my computer right now, which is not very loud. I'm trying to get you through TV. There. Okay. That should. Somebody say something.
Hello, hello. Mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello. Is that helpful? Can you hear me?
And still
Echoey or something?
no.
Oh,
It's still coming through my computer in Riverside.
sometimes you have to go into Zoom audio settings and select, same that.
The Zoom settings and not my
Yeah,
laptop settings.
yeah.
Tech.
Always.
Yeah. A little tour. See if I can find my mouse. There it is. So we have 2 different monitors. I assure you I am not a tech wizard.
if you go down to the audio and do the caret next to it, then they usually have the options for microphone and speakers.
Where?
The audio in the bottom left corner where the microphone is.
Let's see. Amazing how quickly I forgot all of this when I wasn't
I know.
on Zoom anymore. All right, let's try that.
Check. Mic check.
Yes.
Is that working? Okay.
That is. Thank you, Shannon.
We're producing on a budget.
Budget. Yep. All right. Turn this up or down if I need to. Mouse, where'd you go? There we are. Cool. All right, we'll get started. Welcome, everybody. We're recording daily. Just asked that first. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. I am Jackie. I'm directors of Shoestring Dance Residency. My co-director is back here in the back corner. This is Bailey. Thank you for being here today. I'm really excited to do this. I made myself notes, so I'm going to stick to the notes because otherwise I talk way too long and we have limited time. So here we are to discuss producing on a budget. All right, about Shoestring. This is my little introduction. Shoestring is a 2-week residency offering time and space for dance artists in all stages of their creative careers to engage in deep research without the pressure of producing a polished, high production value, big D dance. Shoestring Dance Residency provides choreographers the opportunity to explore, experiment, engage in feedback sessions, and evolve as artists in an encouraging and accessible space. Our mission is to help independent dance artists build community and make work with limited resources. The residency culminates in a final performance followed by a Q&A with all resident artists. Each participating resident receives studio space, production support, professional quality photos, and archival video. Our Present series, which this is a part of, is new for 2026. We are offering 4 discussions throughout the year featuring topics that were voted on by the New Orleans dance community. Each event is free and offered as a hybrid event to maximize reach and accessibility. And you can actually watch our Shoestring Presents archives on our website. You got it? All right, Bailey's on tech for me, which I appreciate. So Bailey's gonna drop that down there if you want to go listen to Ann Glaviano, who talked to us about dance writing, or Kareth Livengood, who talked to us about sound for dance. Both were really great discussions. I highly recommend those videos. We also can't do this without support of our community. If anybody feels compelled to give us a little donation today, Bailey's got that link for you, and it's tax deductible. Woo, how official. All right, and then I'm supposed to plug the show, which is August 15th, for those of you who are in town. If you know anybody who wants to volunteer, lights, sound, check-in, whatever, reach out after the panel discussion. Or if you know anybody who wants to donate items for our VIP patron gift bag. So we have 3 panelists with us today. I'm going to start with Shannon. Shannon has an MFA from Tulane University in interdisciplinary dance performance and a BA in community and environmental planning from the University of Washington. They're on faculty at the University of Kansas, where they research performance entanglements with the natural world and teach in the Department of Theater and Dance. She lives the rest of the time in Detroit. Shannon, I don't even know how to pronounce that, with her partner and her dog. You'd have to do it for me. Shannon was here in New Orleans for a very long time, and we miss them very much. I'm glad you're here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Jacob Henss is a dancer, producer, choreographer, and teacher primarily based in the Midwest. He currently works at the University of Illinois as a teaching assistant professor. In the past, he has been an instructional professor at Illinois State University, an adjunct faculty member at Millikan University, alongside freelance teaching and choreography commissions in the Midwest. He holds an MFA in dance from UIUC and is also a graduate of Webster University with a BA in dance and music. Henss has performed with the Modern American Dance Company in St. Louis, and he is the artistic director of nonprofit Space Station Dance, an organization dedicated to presenting experimental dance work in the greater St. Louis area, which has their premiere tonight, I believe.
Yeah, literally tonight's our opening night, and I just got to the theater and doing the Zoom call from here. So I could even walk you around and show you our crazy setup. So
we're gonna get to that later.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, Leslie, who is here with us in person. Leslie Scott is a New Orleans-based choreographer, educator, and arts administrator whose work bridges the studio, the classroom, and the festival stage. She serves as associate professor and associate dean of performing arts at Tulane University, where her work spans faculty development, curriculum design, and administrative leadership across the university's performing arts programs. Scott is the founding artistic director, boy, we're not even 5 minutes in here, of Body Art Dance Company, and the festival director of the International Dance Festival of New Orleans, which is also coming up in September, in a few weeks. A platform she has built to connect local audiences with global contemporary dance. Her choreographic work has been presented internationally. There's a whole bit. We can let that go. Across these roles, Scott brings a producer's eye for infrastructure together with a maker's instinct for risk, shaping opportunities for dance artists at every stage of their careers. We're very thankful to have all three of you here with us today. I had some questions just to get us started. Some of these are pretty general, and then I had some for each of you specifically. If there's anything that you're like, this is very important that I share today, let me know, and we will get to it. Okay. So I wanted to start with this idea of unconventional spaces. Ann Glaviano was talking about this at her show the other night, for those of you who are in town and managed to see that. That New Orleans is a place where there are not necessarily a lot of opportunities for dancers to make work in big proscenium stages. So I think a lot of us have experimented with unconventional performance spaces. So I wanted to see, have unconventional performance spaces allowed for increased opportunity? How does the space influence the kind of work you make? And does that influence translate onto any work that you make in a more traditional space?
I mean, I'll jump in if that's okay. I'm literally dealing with this right now. So we have Space Station Dance Residency. We started as just a summer residency, and over our 7 years now, we actually are focused on just helping local artists self-produce their own shows. So we've recently in the past year gone from just our one show a year that's our self-produce or our show to hosting 5 to 6 self-production shows. And it's amazing to see how much that has grown so quickly. Artists are just looking for just a venue to take the ease off the production side of things, because I feel like half the battle of our careers, it's 50-50 art, but it's also just organization or finding the space. So we've just opened this residency where we have the space provided. The artist gets 100% of the ticket sales. Actually, most of the pieces, depending on our budget, we actually give money on top of the ticket sales. So the artist can really focus just on the art. So I've seen a boom of artists in St. Louis specifically really take advantage of this. I mean, actually, we're already booked next season and we just started this. So I think there's definitely a need for it, which is amazing. The next thing I would say about that is it does affect the space because our kind of ethos is experimental dance, and that's kind of maybe a loaded word in some sense, but we're just looking at as it Experimenting, meaning you are trying something new as your individual artist in your journey, not necessarily just the aesthetic of postmodern or whatever you want to call it, contemporary dance. But for our space, it has dictated how these artists make work. We really kind of demand that the work is in the round, just of ease of access for people to get to seats, to view floor work. So the only thing we produce is in the round work. And I actually, in my biased opinion, it's actually it's offered the other. You know, we have so many proscenium stages in St. Louis. So it's the other for the artists that maybe, yeah, want to experiment and try something new. It also is different for our audience base. They feel a part of the piece. They're actually, we've had better attendance over the years because they're really in the dances almost literally sometimes. So that's our journey as an organization.
I think, Leslie, you produced something, was it a few years ago in a house? Was it like
Yeah.
a dinner?
Yeah, I wonder if folks can hear me. Can you hear
Everybody
me?
here?
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great. So I think site specific is something that when I was early in my career, I thought it was quite special and different. And now I'm learning that everything that I do is actually site specific, even if it is on a big traditional theater proscenium space. I think most of the artists that I end up working with are viewing traditional spaces as a site, but it's just one of many sites that you might participate in. I have a deep relationship with the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is actually how I started my career about 20 years ago. If any of you know about fringe festivals, they often are in churches and bars and alleys and all different kinds of spaces. And I remember thinking, why isn't this the norm? And the more I'm out in the world and the more I see work, I'm realizing I actually think site specific and more non-traditional spaces is the norm for anyway the contemporary dance that I get the opportunity to witness. It does make it, when I'm thinking about a piece, sometimes I do think about where it's going to end up. But that's just one tool in my toolbox. It's not a value judgment on which space is better. And I think when I was growing up and got my undergrad, it was like the stage is the goal and everything else is fringe. And now I'm like, no, it's whatever is best for the piece. But to your point, Jackie, I did a piece called Maison in 2019, which is actually so long ago, 2019 in the before times. But it was a mobile dining experience that paired food and a dance work in different rooms of a house. And it's something that we hope to continue to explore. But even here with the festival, the International Dance Festival, sure, there is a black box and a warehouse, but both of those ultimately, I was just in a tech meeting before this, super site specific. We're building things, we're moving Marley around where the trusses can go. It feels like we're still in conversation with the space. So I don't really care what scale you are. I think you're always in conversation with the site that you're working in.
I would echo all of those things and I'll see if I can add anything new. But I would say that I think especially in 2026, but even for many, many years, the idea that the stage is the template for everything is like really not the truth. Especially I think the screen is maybe more the template for things in some ways. And that's very different, even though it is a flat and frontal sort of space and experience. But for me, I actually think doing film work starting whatever now 15 to 20 years ago put me in conversation with how to relate to location and space in a different way that just translated and became more natural inside of my performance work. And yeah, and also I think the proscenium as a template is also an institutional colonial white supremacist space. And there's nothing more awkward to me than like seeing things that are like made for that space, but are existing in the space that doesn't acknowledge where they are and actually what the real relationship is to the audience, that the audience is only 5 feet away instead of 50 feet away. And so I think, yeah, I think just to echo both what Leslie and Jacob are saying, like it's um, like dance lives in the space that it's in because it's a live act happening with humans in the room. And so being in relationship to what that relationship actually is, not to say you can't use magical realism and like get people into a world or like transform it, but I'm really invested in like how that happens like together and not like separate from. So every space is an unconventional space.
You're making me think, if I can interject again. Um, My own personal work, I love being in charge of every little aspect, maybe to a fault in some ways. But in my dance theater kind of choreography, there's something about knowing and having control about where every prop is and knowing where everything is, knowing how you can stage it. Like I've done works where I've hung spirals of these lights that came down, and then that's informed and changed all the choreography. So what I do like about these kind of unconventional spaces for performance is that you're in charge and you really cater it. And then the specificity of that choreography to these spaces, I think is should be encompassed in the whole dream of what you're trying to create. And I think that's one of my favorite things. That's the reason I started choreographing actually, is just I want to see this whole world, this whole vision, and actually take more of the theater side and build it, which I love the control, which sounds kind of funny to say.
Jacob, I actually had a question for you that was inspired by those lights. I was going to say, you have an unconventional DIY approach to tech that tends to create unique and stunning aesthetics for your stage, set, lights, costuming. What's your process for this like? And I have to say, these lights, Jacob shows up with like armloads of like cheap fluorescent tube lights in the trunk of his car. And it's like, I'm going to create something amazing from this. You're like, what in the world is going to happen? And then he creates this like chandelier, like this installation light sculpture that hangs in the middle of the stage. What is your process for creating things like that? And yeah, working with tech on a budget the way you do.
Well, I mean that there's every time I do it, it's a different story. That one was out of necessity and that I would not give up my dream, I was like, well, first off, we at this point of our residency, we were in a gym space that we converted to a black box theater. The most funny space. Jackie did a piece there for us actually back in 2023 or 2024. One of those years. But this awkward gym space and there's no lighting. I mean, when I say black box theater, that's loose. There's just Marley on the floor and seats in a circle. So I was like, how can we light the space? There's no lighting cues because I don't have to worry about lighting design, but light it in a way that like adds these pieces, also kind of almost museum, kind of like structural. And I'm really big into architecture relating to dance. So I showed up with these lights. It took the 3 drafts to get this kind of spiral idea. I literally just put string on tennis balls, was throwing it over these rafters, pulling them up, and then for one rehearsal I did a draft. A week later, I did a second draft, and finally by the third draft, I was like, no, we need these like vortexes because the dancers are spiraling and they're circling, and I need to feel this. So we just did these 2 pillars, red lights and blue lights, and it just lit the whole space for the whole show. And then since I did that during the rehearsals, the choreography then starts building about. I mean, we all know you get inspired. You're like, oh, you're right by that light, just touch it, or you're right there, just give it a little bit. So it's usually out of necessity. It started. Now it's just out of I have really big dreams and maybe they never get to exactly what I want, but how do I DIY to find the best solution to get there? And so far, I mean, it's been 7 years of that. And I mean, I never get exactly what I want, but I like what I do. So it's a really just this drive to experiment. And also, I think we've trained our audience to know that that's okay, that you're going to walk into a somewhat construction-y kind of space. And like that's also part of the excitement. You're like, what are we walking into here? So the irony is this show, if I do show you this space, we don't have any of that this year. Is the first year without it. So
Can I add just a little bit to that? So I'll just say I just got out of a tech meeting with the CAC. And if any of you have been in the warehouse space, it's these really cool brick walls and a concrete floor. And I'm sitting with the tech team and they're talking about soft goods, meaning like the black curtains and all these things. And what I realized, I was really confused about the conversation that was happening. I'm like, oh, you're trying to build a black box in a space that is the value of this space is that there are brick walls, is that there are all these things. And so treating the site as a treasure as opposed to an obstacle feels really, really important in the work. I just was like, well, if you're just building a black box here, there's a black box over there. We don't need to do that. But if we're really honoring the space, and I mean, I go through a lot of the spaces and I call it an inventory where I'm like, I got 3 brick walls. I have 1 weird pole sticking out of the ground. I have a gray concrete light, and really thinking of those as assets as opposed to obstacles.
Um, let's go back to Leslie then. You teach a philanthropy class at Tulane. That's still happening? That has, in the last couple of years, tried various methods of selecting grant recipients. Are alternative models of funding and selection finding their footing? And what should the future of dance funding look like?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I'm gonna this is like this is actually my soapbox. The number of funders I sit, but just the very short of it, and I'm super happy to nerd out with any of you. But the class is called Philanthropy and Social Change. I raised a chunk of money for the students at Tulane to practice being the philanthropist. So practice what it looks like to give out money. And inevitably you come up with these models like, well, we must have an application and we must have their financials. And I start by saying, who here is an accounting major? And almost no one raises their hand. Like 18-year-old you with no accounting experience, why do you think you know more than the executive director who's been doing this for 20 years, who tells you that they need this money? And I wish this was $1 million, but it's $10,000. So let's be honest. You're asking for a 10-year sustainability and feasibility plan. You're not sustaining them and giving them the opportunity to do that. And so students are 7 times more likely to participate in philanthropy if they start under the age of 25. And so I think it's really, really important to teach people that giving and being a part of the community isn't just for the ultra wealthy, that there are ways to do that, right? We have time, talent, and treasure, and there's a million ways. You don't have to have treasure if you have a talent. If you really don't have a talent, which I don't believe is true, you probably have some time, whether that means donating or participating. So I think it's been really nice to push on these questions. And what I've loved recently in New Orleans, and it is going to be a long slog, is getting the students to a place in one semester where they say, oh, there should be more resources. Oh, applications should be open. Oh, we shouldn't have extensive reporting requirements. We should take them to coffee instead of forcing them to write these applications. And I can get these students there in a semester. And then I won't name any names, but some local funders who are like, well, it's not possible to do that. I'm like, come on in. I got 25 kids who can tell you it is possible. And so, I'm not sure what's going to come first. Am I going to get the funders to join this like trust-based philanthropy journey, or if I'm just going to get the kids to take their jobs? But I'm hoping to meet in the middle. Because I think we really have to reimagine the labor we're asking for a lot of our artists. And I'm sure you all know this, but I'm usually the one at a meeting where someone stands up and says, and we had 1,000 applicants. And I'm like, and how long did each of those applicants spend writing that application? 40 plus hours? Do you feel good about what you've taken from the community? Does that feel like you're serving your mission? Because if it is, that's great. But I seriously doubt that you feel good about taking that much labor out of the creative economy with just such pennies you're throwing back. So I don't want to hear this is an exciting thing that 1,000 people applied to your $5,000 grant. That says that you're not doing your job. That's the end of my soapbox.
Well, yeah. That's all I have to say.
I mean, oh, sorry. I just want to say one thing is that maybe this comes from a place of somewhat judgment, but I look at our budget, we're operating the tiniest budget as well for our organization. And I look at other organizations, and usually what they're doing that I don't like is informing mine, as we all know. So I have known a couple organizations that spend more money on tech than they do paying the dancers. And I've always been like, I'm so confused by this. Why? How is this helping our craft? How is it perpetuating? So even if it's a small amount of money, I need to see that money go straight to the artist. Like for me, it's a simple aspect, but I'd rather do DIY theater and tech than I would not paying the artist a decent wage. Like you're just making me think of like this relationship I have to some people in my community.
And speaking of community, I did want to ask each of you, like, what role does community play in your work and what you produce?
I will just start talking and stuff will come as my mouth is moving. It's confusing right now. I think I mean I sent you my bio and like it really talks about my academic record and positions, but that has nothing to do with most of my life because I've only been full-time in academia for 3 years. And before that, everything I did was experimental dance and communities all over the place. So I guess community for me, like making is about this dialogue that I'm having with my community. Um, and that's why I keep doing it. It's like obviously not to be rich and famous or like, but it is to get out of bed in the morning and also to feel like I have something that I'm contributing through collaboration, not me singularly, it's never singular, into a dialogue, into uh, a movement, into a process, and that process might be healing, or it might be provocative, or it might be all of the different things that art is. So I guess it's at a very fundamental layer for me. And then so there's like what inspires the making, and then in terms of like what makes the making happen, it's community that makes it happen. So I feel like even at levels of national and international touring, there's a level of mutual aid that's always happening. And that's probably my number one takeaway. If I had to say anything inside of this panel is like presenting on a budget is just mutual aid. And that always like relationship over the transaction. And that's really hard when you're also asking things of people and getting things from them. And that is a lesson that I've learned like the hard way, and I'm still learning all the time, that the relationship is more than the transaction, whatever. Even if you think like it's your time and you get it and you've worked hard or whatever, like the relationship is always more important. And taking care of those relationships, because that is what keeps the work circulating and moving, your own and everybody else's. So community has played a role in that. Like I hold space for community and for other artists. And then I also get to step into spaces that are being held for me to come in as an artist, in other communities, in my own communities. Yeah, I'll just go ellipses and leave it open for the next speaker.
Well, Shannon, this really, I had you in mind when I was thinking about community. I think
Okay.
you have a reputation in New Orleans dance community for being the person who can convince dancers to show up for things.
Hmm.
Few others have motivated contemporary dancers to regularly come to class as you have. If you come through town for 2 days and ask for improvisers, you'll certainly have a robust group of movers participate. What do you think brings dancers together and motivates them to show up and participate in your project?
That's really sweet to hear. It makes me emotional. Um, I think, I mean,
We're
yeah,
also
I'm so excited.
like Shannon will be back soon teaching class.
I'm
Yeah.
coming to teach a class in the festival. I'm so excited. And also, Jacob, I'm really excited to get to know you since I'm in the Midwest now. And I'm like, okay, let's get together. I love fluorescent lights. Um, I mean, honestly, Jackie, like so much of it is timing. This goes to the most like all of my time travel is happening. So I was like, that's what happened in Seattle when we were able to do this organization. And now it's like, hi. And now and it's also what happened in New Orleans. Like the time I stepped into New Orleans, there was actually this vacuum that had been sort of created because urban bushwomen moved their institute out of the city, and that had been this real touchstone for I think a lot of contemporary makers to come together and to get mentorship and training and make stuff. And then Dancing Grounds had laid the groundwork, had started. It was years in making. The Marigny Opera Ballet had started, and it was doing this New Works Festival. The Fringe Festival still happened. So I just stepped in a moment when people were like, had been having some practice, and that practice was taken away, or it was being rebuilt. And like Maritza was part of rebuilding that. And Dancing Grounds just kind of opened their doors and was like, please come in. And Tulane opened their doors and gave me a lot of resource. And so I really think it was about timing in that moment. And I had a lot of people making introductions for me. I came in through knowing choreographers there, Scotty Heron and Curtis and Ann. Um, I mean, I barely knew Curtis and Ann, but I knew them. And then Angèle Bear, who I was dancing with in Portland, is based there. And so she also kind of like it was just community opened the door for me to be in the community. And that creates a very different experience of when you arrive in a community and you're having to build from scratch. Yeah, thank you. Does that answer that question?
Yeah. I'll just add quickly, I think relationships move at the speed of trust. And sometimes that means I have like funding brain, like, oh, this project has to happen in 1 year or two. Like you have this like timeline that's been imposed on you. But when you're really stepping back, and the festival's been a really good reminder of this, some of these relationships take 4 and 5 years. And the festival for us started with a relationship with Chilean artists, and we had the fortune of going there. And they were really honest with me. They're like, we don't trust American choreographers, and we're going to be really upfront with you. You are now the third choreographer to come into our space, say this is going to be a level of reciprocity, and then we give you everything that we have in our community, and then we ask for it in exchange, and it's not given. So there's a lot of colonialism built in there. There's a lot of white supremacy built into that conversation. And so being really aware that if you are traveling, that if you're only extracting from a community, and yes, of course you're sharing a show, but there are other ways to give to community. And so if you're thinking about the me part, I have a show in this community, I'm going to do one masterclass before my show. That is a lovely offering, but I'm not sure that should be the extent of your offering. And so thinking about really building these long-term relationships. Right now I'm on year 10 of this back and forth with my Chilean friends, and it's messy and weird and wonderful and everything I want it to be, but it is certainly not fast. Take some time.
I mean, I'll just give a quick opinion is that I'm constantly thinking about community because our organization is in such early stages. I mean, yes, we're in year 7 and we've seen a lot of growth, but I really feel like maybe it's just in relationship to the times, but everything is so precarious. People change their minds quickly. People forget. People, I don't know, they disappear in some ways. So I was really thinking about community. When we first started this, I saw a ton of big St. Louis organizations just bringing guest artists, and there was nothing really founded for the local individuals. And I was seeing a lot of freelance individuals just leave. They would be like, they'd spend a year to 2 years in St. Louis, and they'd be like, this town sucks. There's nothing more unless you're in this like really big company. I don't want to say names. And so then they just kept leaving. And so our organization really took it on to try to be like, well, how do we build up these great artists? I mean, some are from here, some move here and stay here for years at a time. How do we just offer them a space? Also, if you are in a company, how do you negotiate? Like, how do you feed your soul? How do you feed your passion? It's not always in your company life. What if you want to create your own choreography? What if you want to do that? And I feel like a lot of these dancers were just waiting for the company they were in to be like, oh, after 10 years, you finally get to make a piece in the company. And this offered them a different experience. So I'm constantly as a presenter thinking about community, but mainly the dance community itself. I'm just now reaching an area of curation of I'm thinking about our audience base. And I think there's so many levels to community. There's so many layers to this. We have an insular community that almost feels a little culty. And then we have this community that's a little outside that. And then you're always thinking like for our organization to continue, how do we keep growing that community? Who do we need to connect to? And so it's this kind of exhausting game in some ways. Not only trying to support a community itself, but expand. And you do that for longevity. So it's a as a presenter, it's an interesting word. It's important.
All right. So I wanted to ask, for those of us who are in the process of applying for grants, and I think a lot of us are applying for a lot of very small grants of $500 or $1,000. If you get that $1,000 grant and that's all you've got, what are you putting that money towards first?
I mean, I could talk all day. So I'm not trying to take all the air in the room. So I'll be quick. I just am very passionate about administration, curation, all this. So I'm glad you asked me to be here, Jackie. $1,000 is it's immediately dancers. So it's an easy object or easy decision for me. I mean, I'm paying the people. I will buy my own props. I will buy my own clothes. I'll source costumes. I'll make them wear rags. I want the work that I'm creating to have a certain level of investment And I think even if someone says they're doing something for free as a passion project, unless I'm doing some kind of tit for tat, I don't think they're actually fully invested in some sense. I think even the smallest stipend of $100 goes a really long way, even though they should probably be making 4 times that. So a physical donation or stipend or honorarium is immediately what I'm going towards.
I'll just add my very quick grant writing. There's 3 questions. Why this? Why now? Why you? And usually when you can answer those honestly, to Jacob's point, it usually goes directly towards the artist. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, this is where I'm eventually I want this to be a 10-person piece, but with this $500 grant or this $1,000 grant, valuing the artist and paying the artist is important to me. And therefore this is why it is. That really helps explain your reasoning. And I will say, when I sit on the panel side of things, I always look at the budget first. And then I go back to the narrative, because we vote with our dollars, we vote with our minutes. And so if you're saying you care about artists, and to Jacob's point, the artists are all making $0 and you spend $1,000 on the venue, I don't know. I don't know that you've operationalized your value in a way that lets me, like, I mean, it's so hard with limited resources, but I promise if you answer those, why this, why now, why you usually get to your value system around money.
I just put my answer in the chat, and only because I mean I would always try to find a probably free performance space if possible, but you can't always find free rehearsal space. So, and I do value that dancers have a like correct, nice environment to work in. So I will pay dancing grounds for space as well as pay dancers.
What do you wish someone had told you when you first started producing work? So producing your own work, or helping others produce their work?
Yeah, that is a great question. I need a moment to think unless you two have something.
Maybe if I was to go back to my younger self, that it's okay to learn in public. I think I was really nervous. My first kind of outside of university, my first shows were in New York, and I had this idea that everyone knew more than I did and everyone was perfect. And I got really worried about, I don't know, the lobby was a mess, or like the check-in process didn't go the way like, it's okay if you don't have all the steps. And it's also okay to show work in progress. And it's okay to, I don't know if there's such a thing as failing, but to try things out. And I feel like I really thought there was some sort of big brother watching me. And I wish there had been more eyeballs on me. But I promise you, just doing the thing is okay. And it's okay to be a little messy sometimes. It doesn't have to be perfect.
I mean, I'll jump in is what I'm thinking briefly. I also think that like when you're first starting producing, I think being accepting with the messiness is great. I had no issues with that clearly. I mean, I was just throwing balls over, rafters. But I do kind of wish I didn't have such a negative stigma about grants when I first started. Most of our budgeting for our space station comes from donors, and I've really curated that over 7 years, which is nice. And in the beginning, I was like, I hear all these stories about people saying like, 1,000 people apply for this grant. You're never going to get it. So it's a waste of your time. Or you have to apply for 5 or 6 times to get these grants, which these stereotypes aren't completely wrong. They're stereotypical for a reason. But I do wish I would have taken that adventurous leap sooner into this whole writing and putting words to my producing sooner, because I think we actually could have got grant funding a lot sooner than we did. We didn't have our first grant until last season, so just 2 years ago. Um, and looking, actually, this sounds bad, but maybe because we were more established at that point, maybe that was easier for us to do, but we got it very easily. And so then I'm looking back and I'm like, that's $8,000 that I could have had many seasons ago potentially. So I think it's a gamble. If you don't feel like a writer, I don't feel like a writer. You edit and ask for friends' help, and you really ask your community around you. But I think that was mine. I had such a negative stigma around grant writing.
Um, Yeah. Oh, I also feel like every process and project is really different. And so I kind of go through, like, I could ask, like, what do I wish I knew about that before I did that on everything that I've done? But I feel like I came out of I was in the music world, in the DIY music world first. And so I learned about production and trying and failing, being messy and all of that stuff, like in that. And it felt really easy to translate into me just getting going on my own work and not always waiting for people to ask or provide the opportunity. Um, and then it creates like, um, yeah, and then it creates like, and then sometimes I don't know how to make those worlds talk to the capital D concert, dance, proscenium stage. And so there's some of like, I don't know what I wish, to be honest. Like, yeah, maybe I'm not going to answer that very well. Um, but yeah, I think that like, I think you just have to get going and then you are in a state of figuring it out. But yeah, I feel lucky because I had both sort of this grant writing experience and I had been producing shows for other people. I guess it's always easier to produce somebody else's show than your own. That's like something I wish I would have known. And then I wish I would have known about aftercare, like after a project is over, like what you need to do to come down from it and take care of yourself. Like as soon as the last person leaves and you're like packing up your 18 tote bags and your own projector and you're getting on the train by yourself and you're like replaying everything that everyone ever said, every look that you got, every da, 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 like, and just how you deal with like that time frame into the weeks after when you're returning all the things that you borrowed, when you're writing your thank you notes and you're like having coffee with people and like just how you take care of yourself in that space.
That's a really great point about aftercare. I think that's something that we don't talk about. We talk about everything that comes before it and not the after. I don't know.
The whole thing. I feel like that's where the work starts, to be honest.
A few times I produced so hard that somehow I forgot the strike part of it. And there is nothing worse than having a big full experience with a show and then turning around and being like, oh no, I have to take this dress off and put some sweats on and like literally climb a ladder until 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And like to Shannon's point, what it does to you mentally to be like, oh, now I physically hurt and mentally and you're just like, the strike in particular, like having, even if it's just a buddy, or if you have any pennies, having help there, and then you getting to go out and be with friends who got to see your show afterwards, because it can really color the way that you experience the whole show as you're reflecting on it in the future.
All right, should we open it up to questions from anyone in or on Zoom? Yeah.
Okay. Hi. My name is Imani. I'm one of the resident choreographers this year. And so my question, I feel like, is kind of like, I don't exactly know how to word it, but I'm going to try my best. But I guess my question is, how for like, especially early career choreographers like myself, how best would you recommend us like to learn like the production world? Because I feel like for me, I've been in so many shows and I've been, just one of the bodies on stage, and now I'm transitioning to like choreographing and doing more of the behind the scenes work, and it's such a interesting transition that I'm starting to figure out. And i I feel like the roadblock I'm kind of hitting is like looking ahead, and I'm like, oh, what do I want to do, but how do I get there? And like, I'm so excited like listening to you all talk and like hearing your advice, but at the same time it's like it looks like a mountain where it's like, how do I scale this mountain? How do I get there? And the first thing that comes to mind for me is like, do I need to like go back to school. But then there's the idea of like, well, school is expensive and I don't have the funds for that. So, you know, doing this residency program is kind of like the first step for me. And I was just wondering, like, what advice you guys have for like those next steps moving forward.
I mean, I'll jump in. I can only speak from what I decided to do, but I think it worked well. It's like, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I'm doing this like one look lighting design for a show, which I will advocate for is great. It's if you don't have a lighting design, you don't have those capabilities. Even just putting like 10 lamps in the space, and making them part of the choreography in the set actually goes a really long way. And so by starting with the basic steps and just chiseling at it one at a time, that was my basic lighting step number one. So using lighting, for example, step number two, I bought a fancy light, and instead of having it hooked up to any kind of cable or lighting board, just click the back, learn what the channels are, and have that be the one light look. That was step two. And then you keep going from there. Then I researched what's a DMX cable. Then I researched what board should I do. And so every year it was like you add a little more knowledge. And I totally recommend actually doing it progressively like that because you're not overwhelmed. Add small morsels to eat at a time, and it over time it accumulates. So I definitely recommend see your vision. If you want a blue light to top light for the whole show, figure out what that means. I don't know if that means you're suspending these damn string lights, or I don't know if you're buying fancy ones, but it's one little morsel at a time. Because even for example, yeah, it just keeps progressing. Like now I'm learning programs that for like visual projection, like Isadora and things like this, that I never would have thought I'm learning 4 years ago. And even then, at this point of my life, I'm using it the basic level. That's what I'm always starting is like, how can I use this the most simple? And then keep going from there. And it is just a lot of time. I do it's a lot of, for me, I don't like to read that much. I should more, but it's really, I'm a more doer. So I'm kind of like experimenting with it, watch a YouTube video because everything's on YouTube, and then try it again, and then working with the space. So I'm always learning in the moment with the back of my head, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier. Our audience and myself are low stakes. It's low pressure. If I don't get it done for the show, it's fine. If it looks shitty and there's shit all over the floor, it's fine. So I think that low pressure also aids to that.
I'll add and say, obviously not a union house. It's a little bit of a different ask, but if there's anybody in town, a theater company, a dance company doing interesting things, they would welcome an extra set of hands. And I really think you can build yourself a free internship. You can build yourself a mini grad experience. I mean, that's sort of a loaded, I guess, statement, but you can find a way to say, hey, company X, I love what you're doing. Could I shadow you, or I could help with production for the day? To Jacob's point, if you have that hands-on experience, you're going to know things you didn't know in a way that really only come up when you're in the moment. Like, oh, wow, there's an easier way to lay marley floor. That might be helpful. I would also recommend, if you know that you're in a particular space, and that typically is when there's a more traditional venue, but go see other work in that space and see how other people are problem solving, because it might help you spark ideas. And then you can also pay attention to who is the lighting designer in town that I really liked their work, and start having those conversations. But I think the hands-on being in the room with production when it's happening can be really valuable. And potentially you could even do some exchanges like, hi, I'd like to come and volunteer for this weekend when you have a show. And then maybe they have somebody on their staff who could help you as well in an exchange. Yeah.
I will add two things and try to remember what they are as I talk about them. One is that if you've been a dancer in other people's work, don't underestimate what you already know. Because if you've been through a tech process, you've been through a tech process. You know what it's like going to queue. You know what it's like to do the run through, like the no dress run through, then the dress. And like, so you have some of that experience. And it is different to be on the other side of it, but you kind of know the steps of it. And then each space is going to be different because you don't always get like a week-long tech. You might not even get an hour-long tech. And I was thinking about shoestring in conjunction with like like when I first started making work, I did the exact same sort of thing. I did a 2-week residency that was provided through a studio here in Seattle called Open Flight. And then we had a showing at the end, and it was no tech. It was during the daytime. It was the first time like my mom saw what like experimental contemporary dance was. And then there were 3 stools and we fell off of them like 35 times. Um, and then I took that piece and then I was like, okay, I have a piece. I have this like little piece. It's like 20 minutes long. And then I just like the next opportunity was like, there was a festival in Tacoma, which is like 30 minutes away from here. And so then I got to take this festival or that piece to this festival. And then there they had some tech. So then I like learned, oh, I need like 2 lighting looks. And then I applied to do this piece in a different festival. And then I had a year to keep working on it. So then I like developed this piece to work in it to be in a New Works festival. And I was lucky to be in Seattle where I feel like there's a little bit more of a ladder of opportunities that you can that you have access to, but they are around you. I mean, I see everybody in New Orleans figuring it out. When I was there, we did a residency in bars and we did our show every week in a bar for 6 weeks, 2 summers. And yeah, it's like, I mean, just to say like one step at a time, like you're going to have something when you come out of this residency, and then you build like, what is the next step for that thing? And then what is the next step for that thing? And what is the next step until you're tired of working on that piece and you start something new. And just, there's no arrival, like the idea that you actually get to a premiere and tour. It's such a rare occasion. I mean, I shouldn't say it's rare because you can really work that model, but like, in terms of like wanting to get the money to do the big vision and like it is kind of rare that you get all the resource that you want and need to do the work that you want to do. And it's really the steps along the way that become the work. So yeah. So just take a step and then take another step. That's what I would say. And I'm excited for you.
Other questions?
I have a question. We have not even talked about this yet. But we're kind of in the process of putting together a collective to sort of like formalize our collaborations. And one of my long-term dreams for that is to put together some kind of festival focusing on Caribbean contemporary dance. So my question to all of you is like, in terms of convening people, how did you go about that when you first started putting together the festival? What are your suggestions for like, I mean, it's a long-term thing, but bringing people from out of state, bringing people from maybe out of country, how do you think about that at the beginning? I'll go quickly. I have the privilege of having a full-time academic job, which affords me, I do not know if I would be able to do the festival without some of the support that I get from an institution. And so for me, that looks like access to studio space. That means my bills are paid. So because I absolutely do not make money at the festival. And what I was really struggling with before I got an academic job was trying to pay, like, for me to live and pay my rent and also do something that I care deeply about, which is a platform for other artists. So I say what I really did was make sure that I got myself to a place where I felt like I could give of myself in a way that was sustainable. I see a lot of artists give so much and then burn out. And so I think about at whatever scale this looks like, however long your journey takes you, thinking about how you can also be kind to yourself in the process. To be really honest, when I'm producing the festival and we're on year 4 of the International Dance Festival, it is a full-time job that I don't get paid for. And it has frankly pulled away from my own creative projects. Now, some people are very able to produce at this level and also have their own artistic works. I'm regularly in New Orleans anyway, competing against myself. I'll write a grant for the festival and then I'll write a grant for my own artistic work. And I'm sort of like, well, only one is gonna get this, which is a good and a bad thing, I guess. But I will just be frank and say I produce my own work just a bit less than I wish I was right now. But on the flip side, I feel like my world has gotten so big and juicy and wonderful, and I'm loving the community that I'm building. So for me, I think about administration not as like, this is my admin work and this is my creative work. I really bring my creative self into the festival. And sometimes that means like all kinds of magic. Like I'm taking this penny from over here and giving it to this and turning it into this. And maybe there's a free room to stay. So it's really this like master kind of Sudoku game to make it work. I'm really happy for the way the festival fills my well, but I would say like having a clarity of why you want to do the festival and or an administrative structure where you could share the load, because it is, I have actually 2 grant writers who work with me, in addition to us grant writing for the festival, in addition to the producing, in addition to I'm bringing a trans artist to town, and I have now probably had more than 100 hours of meetings with lawyers to make sure she's safe to come here. So, you know, you have to have the time in your piggy bank to be able to give to those processes that maybe won't be evident on stage, but I know how important they are to me. So I would think clarity of goal is probably going to guide when and where it's time for your festival.
Can I interject really quick? Is Tess, I didn't realize you were there until Jackie moved. I was like, oh, I know Tess. It's like, hello. Okay. Um, I was so shocked by seeing that you were there. I was like, oh my God, how did I remember that? I forgot part of the question. Is it just about bringing in international guests?
Yeah, that too. But I was just thinking about like down the road creating some kind of festival that has a smaller focus on Caribbean contemporary dance, and just thoughts on how to start something like that.
Shannon, do you have something?
I'm just like, have I started a dance festival? I did, yeah, I did a festival. I mean, it was kind of like it was a different, for a different thing though. It was a festival that was in New York for presenters to see work that was coming from the South and from Europe through relationships that I had. And so that feels like a really different thing. So I'm thinking about that. Um, Jacob, please talk and say something if you have
Yeah, I
something.
mean, I'll jump in, but I'm also it's a touchy subject for me in good and bad ways. We just hired our first international guest artist for Space Station, which I never thought that's something I would actually say. We specifically had a donor give money, and also she curated. She was like, I want to bring this guest artist in. She approached it to me. I reviewed the materials, and I was like, this seems nice. Also, you're giving money towards it. I'm never going to say no to that. It freed up money to hire more dancers for us. So I was like, yeah, win-win. That was when I was really optimistic about 9 months ago. Then in the process, you do realize, or maybe I realized, how much work it is. It's exactly what you were talking about, Leslie. It's like, are they going to feel safe? What's our political administration like? Can they even get through, to like the border control? So these are some hoops we've had to jump through. And this is only one artist. If you want to do a festival, I'm assuming you're bringing a few in internationally. So, I mean, just being mindful of like, how are you going to pay them? I think we're paying $200 extra just to pay her legally through a Swedish company to then, things like that. Like that way we don't have to worry about some of the legalities and things. So it's like all this extra work. Is it worth it? I think so. I think it's definitely worth it. It's validating to see another individual from another company or country have the same feelings and reactions to things that we do. So like that was a really almost homely experience. But all I can say is just one guess is a lot of work. Also, I'm driving her around everywhere. Like there's a lot, there's more I could go down. There's a lot of work, more than I thought. So go into it knowing that you're gonna need a team and preferably some money. Just to like, because I think you do need to outsource. Maybe you rent them a car, maybe that you do, I don't know, little details that add up for your workload.
Well, I really could talk for, I mean, I'm happy to take you to coffee and tell you more. I will say on a positive note, there are, depending on the country that you're working for, there are organizations internationally that can help support. So for this next project, we have a commission with the French choreographer Aina Allegra. And so the Villa Albertine is an amazing partner who's helping fund some of her coming here, which is amazing. And she has a full administrative team in France in a way that I aspire to. But on the flip side, because she is legally a French working artist with the French government, she has a standard per diem. She has a number of hours she's able to work in a row. She has a minimum she has to have 4-star hotel, or but like there's just a list of things. And then ethically, I think about, I don't want dancer A on stage to be paid more than dancer B on stage. And while I love the standards that certain countries set, frankly, I have Chilean artists that don't have those same standards from their government, where I'm working with the Ministry of Culture. And then I have the French government, who has much higher standards in terms of their pay. And thinking about what are my responsibilities as a presenter, and what does equity look like in these spaces. So it can trigger a lot of things, but having a presenting partner in that way can be amazing. And so this French this French organization, Villa Albertine, is opening up some of the French diasporic opportunities in the Caribbean. So now we're talking to PETA, who's opening up an opportunity for a Martinique guy. So there maybe are ways of getting there, but again, it's relationships. And I would say I'm on year 5 of these conversations that you're going to see a whisper of at this festival. And I think sometimes people don't realize how many years of relationship building it's taken to get to just the very first thing on stage that you see.
I wanted to add one more thing really quickly, is that I should say something positive. And one good thing that came from this is that because it was an international exchange with a Swedish artist, the Swedish government actually paid for all the travel expenses. She applied for a grant there. We had the donor money there. So in that sense, it opened up money that normally wouldn't be there. And we didn't pay for travel fees in that sense. So sometimes if you do a little research and find grants for that, that worked out in our favor extremely. Just throwing that out there.
We are at the end of our time here. Is there anything else y'all want to mention while we have you here?
I did have a soapbox moment really, really quickly, and it's not a fully formed idea, is that I do think taking the pressure when you are self-producing a show, taking some of the pressure off that you need to have perfection or replicate more these I don't know, these almost extremely expensive ideals of production aesthetics necessarily. I think if you alleviate some of this, you actually get, I think, the energy's put into the work. What I'm seeing is like you do less about, I need to have the perfect light plot. I see that energy go into the work with these local artists in St. Louis, and the work, when it's nurtured that way, is so fruitful. So I just want to put that out there, that if you're really looking at honing in your craft and learning who you are as a choreographer, it's okay to self-produce. And I actually biasly think it makes the work better. So just putting that sense out there, that I'm seeing this trend the more and more we produce in St. Louis. So
My last thing is be a part of the community you want to build. So go to other people's shows. And if financially that's challenging, most people will have a volunteer program, but it means a lot when people see you in their spaces. And I see a lot of, at least some of the students I mentor through Tulane, they're like, well, so-and-so didn't come to my show. Okay, well, when was the last time you went to their show? And so I think a little bit about what it means to be in community where you can, so that when you're asking for those favors, or when you're asking for people to help support, it's available to you. And clearly you all are, because you're in these spaces. So yeah, look to your right and left. These are your people. Yeah.
Is this you?
I just echo everything and thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for doing this. I'm happy to be here and just to hear from Leslie and Jacob. And I wish I could hear a little bit more from the artists, but thanks, Jackie, for having us and for doing this. It's
Thank you so
amazing.
much.
yeah, what a fun panel. We should take this on the road. We should do it again. So thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Bailey. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.